Hello, and welcome to the Dr. Money Matters podcast, the show where we discuss important financial topics that were never covered in med school. I'm your host, Dr. Tarang Patel. Welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Money Matters podcast. This is part 2 of an episode I recorded with Dr. Victor Mangona and Dr. David Anderson, two of the most prolific and well-respected financial commentators on the various physician groups. Remember, they're not professionals, although like I said previously, David is working towards that, but so please do your own diligence. And if you haven't listened to part 1 of this recording, I encourage you to go back and listen to that before you listen to this episode. This is episode 26. Part 1 is episode 25. Now, this episode was recorded a few months ago, so some of the things have changed, such as the various market corrections that we've had in February and March and at the beginning of April as well. And also Bitcoin has come back down to earth a little bit, but the principles that we discussed still apply. And now back to the conversation. Here's another question I think that recently kind of came up. And it's a form of, because I think everyone has seen the growth of the market over the last 9 years, I think since the 2008, 2009 bottom. But people are, and this is not just the stock market, but obviously real estate for much of the country has appreciated significantly as well. So David, what would you say to someone? I think I saw a post today or yesterday about someone who is a little bit concerned, that the market is feeling a bit high, a bit, maybe reaching a bull market top here. And they're talking about pulling out of the market. What obviously there's a lot of factors, age, risk tolerance, things like that. But, what kind of advice would you have for someone who's still in their working age range about how to handle the psychology of market timing?
It's difficult. And what's been demonstrated with each time somebody's really trying to do this is that more often than not, even the professionals don't really know when you're going to strike when the iron's hot. Obviously, buy low and sell high is what you want to do, right?
They always tell us that.
Tell me where the high's going to be, okay? That you just shouldn't do that. Right. The average amateur investor managing one's own portfolio, in my opinion, should never try to time the market. Yes, clearly we've gone up tremendously. Yes, this tremendous market we've been, it is not sustainable, and we know that. But I could go ahead and sell everything I've got right now and put it all on, Dogecoin or what have you. And SoCoin, much currency, very money. But, and then it goes up 10% before it crashes out. And then, all right, well, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump back in. Well, where am I jumping back in? Am I jumping back in at the very trough, or am I coming back in while it's been on its way up? I was not investing in 2007, 2008. So that has to be the first admission that I make here. Okay. So I have not yet had to hold through a bear market. I haven't had to do that yet. I'm very pleased that I have not had to do that yet, because it means the economy hasn't tanked. But I'm thinking of being a more cerebral and emotional person. I think that holding through and writing this is not going to matter. Who's going to get hurt the most is going to be those who are relying very heavily on trying to avoid sequence of returns risk,
right? Which
is people who have been saving, fixing to retire. Hey, you just lost half your retirement because you're totally in equities, and equities just tanked 40%. But it's not something that should be done, and people, in my opinion, should be re-averaging, reallocating their rebalancing, I think is the term we tend to use, their portfolios toward their desired asset allocation at least once a year, maybe twice a year. I know some people that like to do quarterly rebalancing, but you got to realize that a lot of your funds, some of these funds may have 90-day redemption penalties, and so if you try to do it too often, then you can actually end up losing. I think some funds have like 5.25%. Someone I was looking at under the hood the other day. Right. That if you sell that fund too soon, then you actually got to pay your penalty back. But trying to guess whatever the next hot sector is going to be, you're trying to rebalance into REITs, because REITs are going to skyrocket and they're going to be great. We've been saying this for how long? That's folly. Stick to your allocation, rebalance it a little bit, maybe consider tuning this up by 5%, this down by 5%, what have you. Right. But trying to jump headlong, and this is a bit of a strawman argument I'm doing myself, I realize, but trying to jump headlong into, the dot-com boom, or thinking that, hey, not going to get any better than this. I'm going to sell out. I'm going to get into, I'm going to put it all in cash or, fixed income securities or, precious metals or what have you until the crash. I'm going to buy back in. You can't catch a knife while it's falling. You don't know where the top is going to be. You don't know where the bottom is going to be. Pick your allocation and stick with it.
There you go. I think that's the key right there, because I mean, I think I was just gotten out of residency. I was just a first or second year as an attending in the Air Force when the 2008 market crash came. And so I was early in my career, and, but it was still not fun to see the money that you put into your retirement be, even though as small as it was, get reduced by a lot. And then to see colleagues who, older colleagues who were kind of much closer to retirement age. I mean, there were panicked looks in their faces. And so it is different, in reality than kind of just in theory. But the answer is the same. And I think that's what you're saying is you have to figure out what the right asset allocation is for you. And that can change over time, and it should change for most people over time. But don't try to time the market individually, because just for example, the same argument could have been made that the market feels very top. Has been 8 years in the last year, and we had another 20% gain of the S&P in 2017, and you could have said it January 1st, and so far, I think it's a 5% return, if I'm not mistaken, in just the first 2-3 weeks of 2018. So,
man,
yeah.
Really? It's been that much?
Ridiculous. This is not. So, it's great.
But anyway, so I think
I think 2 years ago, the second week of January, it tanked. How much? 10% in or I don't know. It seemed like a lot. I think it was 10% in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the year that I front loaded.
Of course.
And this is the year that I didn't. Well, I did last year, but we may buy a house next month. So I've been keeping my cash, just loading it up, and then I'll deal with it later. But yeah, thanks for telling me it's been up 5%. Appreciate it.
Like we said, don't worry about it. You're not timing. Don't worry about it.
That's what annoys me about Fidelity's 5 business day hold on getting money out of a traditional IRA and into the Roth, or you're back to a Roth. It's like, dang it, another percent. But micromanaging your looking at Morningstar every day to see what's happening. For a buy and holder or somebody who wants to be a buy and holder, that can be detrimental.
Right. So one thing that you mentioned, David, and I think I know where both of you where your thoughts are about this, but it's on everyone's mind: cryptocurrency. Well, let's just talk about it. I'm just going to say it. It's not an investment, but that's my feeling. It's a speculation. There's nothing wrong. As long as you know that going in, that's fine. But I do want to hear what you guys think about it. So Victor, tell me what you think about it.
So this is interesting. So this is a currency, right? So I would first want someone to think about how would they invest in any other currency? Would you invest in the Canadian dollar? Would you invest in the euro? Would you invest in the yen? Certainly there's a role for some people to have certain currencies in their portfolio, especially if potentially I don't know if they are from that country and may retire there, okay? But often currencies are used in your portfolio as a commodity, as a stable currency, and then it hedges you towards economic changes throughout the global market based on the economy of that country. It's not something people in general invest in for the purpose of it gaining value, or people are never investing in something to lose their money. I shouldn't say never, but there are people who often invest in things that are inversely correlated, which will often lose money, and they do that on purpose as a hedge. Mm-hmm. And I would definitely consider doing that myself in the right situation. But the reason why people are into cryptocurrency is because it's up. And that's never the reason to invest in something. Your asset allocation should be determined by your long-term goals. If you are buying something that produces no income, which is something that both a bond as well as a stock ultimately do, you are not necessarily investing your money. you're putting your money into a different currency. Now, when you're hoping it goes up and then hoping that you sell it higher, that is purely speculation. That's all it is. If you were okay with buying it on the way down and knowing it was going to go down, that is the only reason why you should ever invest in something, because ultimately your asset allocation strategy is indicating that you should. So I don't invest in cryptocurrency. I know a lot of people do put money in there, and ultimately a lot of people are going to get burned. Some people have made money. A lot of people have made money, but I don't think this is going to end well, especially with a recent article I just read about people using credit cards to put money into cryptocurrency.
Absolutely.
Yikes. It's happening. It's happening. And I mean, it's ridiculous. And some of it's being done by people who have, this comes back to financial epistemology, which I mentioned in sort of my overture, is that there's people who have absolutely no clue what they're doing here. Sinking tens of thousands of dollars into this ridiculously volatile thing, if you can even call it a thing. Does it exist? I mean,
but wait, David, wait a second. But my brother told me about this other coin that's coming out that has it's the next
one's a good one. Though.
The next one.
That one's a good one though. That's the one you got to be on. Yeah. The Dogecoin. That's where it's at.
I index my cryptocurrencies. I have a market weighted average index.
There is one of those. Is there not a crypto ETF now that somebody made? I mean, you can make an ETF out of anything, man. But I think it's a little bit ridiculous. And some of the people that are sitting there using whatever sort of quantitative analysis that they use to try to analyze what the intraday changes in price may be to get in here and get out here. Basically the only people that are ones doing that are the only people that I know that personally know, and clearly this is anecdotal data, are the ones that have made any significant money off of it. You can't buy and hold with it,
right? Because
it's not going to have that nice upward to the right, beta of one sort of curve that our longer term investments are going to have, like your equities, bonds, the stuff you'll usually trade inside a brokerage account. This stuff we have no idea what this stuff is going to do. If it's going to ridiculously continue to increase, go down, no idea. So that alone is one reason why any serious investor should really ever properly consider jumping into this stuff. If you want to have some fun, if you want to make a few coins here and there, if you want to jump in, see what happens. Oh, hey, I'm up 10%. Great, good for you. You just gained 10%. Okay, it'll still be 6% after you pay your short-term capital gains taxes on it. Whatever, good for you. But this is a hot potato, man, and it could be crashing as we speak for all I know. But you can, sure, but I mean the risk is huge. The volatility is huge.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah, I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't definitely wouldn't short.
Is there a derivative ETF for cryptos?
If there is, that'd be something to consider.
I mean, they're all the exchanges are getting into it, so I'm sure one is coming up if it hasn't.
Yeah, the exchanges love it because there's so much transactional volume. Everybody's just monetizing on everybody else's speculation.
It's the casino; they always win, right?
Yep, yeah, they do.
Okay, so let's get to the next quick question. And this is a little bit interesting because I didn't know, Victor, that your brother was a financial advisor. So I was just going to say, what do you think? Do you need a financial advisor?
Victor's going to snipe his brother.
Well, yeah. So I manage my own investments now. So I don't need a true financial advisor in the pure sense, but I do pay for advisors. I pay for consultants. I pay a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I pay my CPA a lot of money. I pay a lot of other experts, or some people would call people gurus. Mm-hmm. And I happily pay people a lot of money when they educate me on ways to make a lot of money. Right. I'm not afraid of spending money to make money. And so when it comes to, and also to protect money. So principal protection is also a very, very, very important thing for physicians, and liability protection. So, I have a asset protection attorney who helps us with our entities. And I honestly don't understand everything as well as I would like to. But I spend the money because that's very, very valuable. Now, if a financial advisor were very valuable to me, I would very happily pay one.
Right.
I'm still looking for that right financial advisor that I'm going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
But when I do find one, I will happily pay them hourly.
Yes. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So, I'm going to be my usual annoying self like I am when I'm rounding with my trainees on the unit. Define you, define need, and define financial advisor. Okay. So, and this is a very personal question, okay? And being somebody who plans on attaining a certificate in personal financial planning this year, and ideally providing this service to people as an actual thing.
Yes.
So, I would kind of be sniping myself to say, no, you don't need one. By the way, I'm selling financial advisor. But does the average person necessarily need one? Well, most of what the average physician, including early career physicians, should be doing is basically bread and butter. Okay, Google is your friend, read the manual. Mostly bread and butter stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That for most folks, once you attain that bit of education, you attain that by reading a book, getting on the internet, asking questions, or sitting down with a fee-only, advice-only financial advisor. Great. You've educated yourself. You've answered the questions. You can now go forth and make money slowly over time. Somebody that has a slightly greater amount of complexity to their asset structure, okay, is definitely going to require some form of financial and or legal professionals, as Victor has already mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The average person that ways in which you do not need a financial advisor, you do not need a financial advisor to manage your portfolio. All right. To decide if you're going to put it into, BTSAX or what have you, which international small cap fund are you going to, you don't need an advisor for that.
Right.
That's just money off the top. That's just money off of your compound gains that you're not getting. Especially one that pays something called AUM, or assets under management fees. Now, I know you guys know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically going to pull, say your advisor charges you 1% of your assets under management every year, and they're managing your retirement, that has millions in it. So every year, that's what is that, like 10,000 out of your portfolio for that.
Right.
And so even going forward, you're basically losing 1% a year onto what you're otherwise gaining. And you're losing that 1% a year of assets under management.
Even if it goes down.
Even if it goes down. Yes. And so you can go ahead and put into a computer, with your average annual rate of gain that you want to do over the 30 years that you're going to be saving or what have you. Subtract 1% from that and see how much that is. For the average physician, don't be surprised if that's somewhere around $1 million.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. We're on the same page here.
Yeah.
We are of sound mind. Where, and again, I guess I don't have a business here, so I'm not advertising for myself, but maybe I will devil's advocate a little bit here, is that if an individual has extremely valuable time,
mm-hmm.
okay, so that is, say you don't have much time to spend, you want to go to your children's dance recitals, soccer games, you want to coach the basketball team, or if you can just bill out hundreds of dollars an hour sitting at your computer stuff. I don't know if you read studies at home, what have you. And if you can find somebody that has a very, very low sort of fee, whether it's a flat rate, and you just have absolutely no knowledge or any interest at all, and if that's the case, you're probably not listening to this podcast.
Right.
One might.
But you should be listening.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Money Matters, guys. Get on it. Download it. Get up on there. But that's the sort of person for whom it would make sense to have an advisor. I wouldn't advocate for that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I might be able to understand if somebody said that was going on. I want to put the shoe on the other foot. I want to understand your perspective. Based on my own opinions, that's not something I would decide to get behind. But if you need planning help, educational help, or this is all just way too much, trying to figure out your classic Boglehead 3-fund portfolios, you feel like that's too much, or you really want to risk 1% of your assets a year, go for it, I guess. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Well, I think we're on the same page about this. I mean, I think like you said, it's not for, and this is where I think the confusion for a lot of people who are not kind of interested in the financial world is they do think of it as someone who picks their as their broker, not necessarily a more broad advisor. And I think that's the distinction, because there's definitely a role, in my opinion, for a broad-based financial planner who handles your insurance, not necessarily sells you insurance or anything, but just discusses those topics that maybe we don't know and brings those things up. And you pay them in a fee, a flat fixed hourly fee or something like that. Those terms get a little bit tricky after a while. But so I definitely agree that there is a role for that if you're not inclined to learn about these type of things. And many people aren't. But like you said, David, the 1% asset under management is a killer. So
it sounds so small.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it goes along with what David had said. And a lot of people, I think now with the internet, information spreads much quicker. But a lot of the generation before had no idea. Even explaining this to older colleagues, they never thought about it, because I earned 18% last year. Well, you didn't really, because your guy took it's a lot of guys, women too, 1.25%.
Sure.
And then the mutual fund that they had you invested in also had another 1%. So, but anyway, that's.
One thing I love hearing, and again, I'm sorry to lose. Yeah. One thing I love hearing, especially with regard to 2018, is like, man, my financial advisor, man, he is doing great, man. He made me 9% last year, right, and the average is like 6%. So, man, he did great. I'm like, yeah, bro. MSCI HWI was up 24% in 18 or 17. So, yeah, you lost.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, like, let's just use 8 as a compound annual growth rate for the U.S. stock market, just to make it simple, because you work, let's say, 8 hours a day. Would you give out 1 hour of your pay every single day for perpetuity to the person who found your job and helped you, find you another job when you felt like moving? I mean, nobody would do that. And people are very, 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 very scarce mentality when it comes to, spending money on cable. But giving an hour of your time every day at your job, that's just incredible. That's like more than a month you could have another month of vacation.
Right.
If you just thought about it in time. Then the other way I think about 1% is, what is the difference in your stock to bond ratio? If you wanted to take 1% off of your gains, how much less equities could you carry? So for a lot of people who read my posts, I'm a very strong advocate for a 60-40 portfolio. Now, this is for people who don't do real estate. I do 50 because I have some real estate in there, but 60%, 40%, 60 to 40 over the past century has only trailed 100% equities by 1% compound annual growth rate. So you could take 40% of your equities off the table and just sacrifice 1% compound annual growth rate, substantially decrease your volatility and your max drawdown. So basically, you could just give yourself a 60-40 portfolio with a Vanguard balanced fund and like all of your accounts.
Right.
And you're going to do better than if you had somebody else put you in, a 90-10 portfolio that they manage and charge you 1% for.
Right. Right. That's actually a good way. I like the way you kind of explain things in time format, because I think that's a really, good way for people to think about it. So good. Okay. Well, kind of changing notes here a little bit. I saw this post earlier today. It might have been from a few days ago, but it was about a medical student who passed away during residency interviews. And, he left behind a wife with 2 young kids, one on the way. It was just a terrible situation. And then there was, some links to a GoFundMe page, and I'll put the link up on the show notes here. But, there was a little bit of discussion. Obviously people were, sending their sorrows, and it's a terrible tragedy and stuff. But Victor, you had a very good post about what the donations would be going towards, and how to structure it and things like that. And I think there was a little bit of confusion and a little bit of, again, within the limitations of social media, you can't convey nuance that well sometimes. So I would like for you to, if you don't mind, just kind of explain what you had said and kind of what you were trying to talk about there.
Yeah, there's not often that I feel like disactivating my account, but so... All right, so this is a very, very sad story. This is a 4th-year med student. I think he's actually from Texas, but was in California interviewing, and he has 2 children, and one is 2 weeks from being due to be born, and is married, and unfortunately got hit head on by another car driving on the wrong side of an interstate highway. Just horrible, 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 horrible thing. And I actually subsequently found out, I think yesterday, in a completely different forum, the person who posted the GoFundMe had posted this in a different forum. And I found out in that thread that the family didn't have insurance, didn't have any life insurance policy. This was a financial independence forum. And so there were a lot of posts, and people asked if he had insurance. And actually the poster who put it there, who was the one who posted the GoFundMe, had said it was actually something that, he and his wife had just recently discussed. He's starting residency, but they didn't feel the cash flow that they ultimately decided not to pay for the insurance. And I apologize if I'm misquoting anything, but they didn't have a policy. Now, my post in the original forum that this was discussed on a medical forum was, did the person have life insurance? The GoFundMe had made a lot of money very quickly, much of which was due to the press it received. And I read the entire post on GoFundMe, and it hadn't indicated what the money was going to be used for. And usually when I've read GoFundMes, there's an indication of the utilization of the money. Not to say that they don't have a use for money, but I just didn't know what it was going to be allocated to. The goal had increased from, I think, over 100,000 to 200,000. And the last I saw had raised $250,000. And so I had asked, and this is before I knew if the person had insurance, was, does he have life insurance? And if so, what's the plan for the $250,000 or $200,000, which was the goal? And if he doesn't have life insurance, well, what's the plan for the $200,000? Obviously, they certainly need money, but that's not enough money to sustain a family on. So what you do with the money is highly valuable. Is it going to be set up as a fund for the kids to go to college, or is this going to be used for living expenses? I mean, if the person had, let's say, a $1 million life insurance policy, I think people would think differently about giving the money. Or if, let's pretend the person comes from an incredible amount of wealth with, family worth tens of millions of dollars. Who knows? We just don't know. And I donate a lot of money, and I donate a lot of time. And the same way, I'm very careful about how I invest my money. When I give my money away, I want to make sure that my money is going to a good cause, and I like to know how it's going to be used. So there were people who were not happy with my post asking questions about the life insurance, but unfortunately he doesn't. And so then I was thinking, what would I do if I were in this situation and I had $250,000 and I had 3 children? How am I going to make this work? Now, obviously, in the short term, she's just about to have a child, so they would need the cash for short-term expenses while she has a newborn. But the sustainability is where I was really focusing on, is like, what's the long-term plan? We need to find a way to help this person, earn a living wage, earn money so she can take care of her family. And I was saying, if I had $250,000, this is what I would do. I would, and this is me because I like real estate, but I would find a 4-plex. Okay. Now my parents own the perfect property for this strategy. They own a 4-plex that has a 3-bedroom and it has 3 1-bedrooms. This is in Metro Detroit, and I don't know, the value of it's probably, of the whole 4-plex, maybe $400,000. I think that's even a high amount. But let's just say $400,000. She could take $80,000 of that and buy this 4-plex. She could then move her family into the 3-bedroom where she'd have plenty of space for she and her 3 children. The 3 other units would all be rented out to individual people and would basically be able to pay for her unit with extra cash flow. It would just regular renters. But if you had something like this in an area where you actually could run an Airbnb, which is what we do here, you could run an Airbnb with 3 units. She could always be at home with her kids and managing an Airbnb with the 3 other units. And that would only require a startup cost of around $100,000. And basically that could generate enough income for her to sustain not only a residence, but also living expenses. Now, wouldn't cover insurance necessarily, but that's actually a sustainable way to maintain your basic ongoing daily necessities. Right. They were in medical school, so they probably weren't really living off of that high of a budget. They could probably sustain that lifestyle for perpetuity with that type of a strategy. Right. Now, I don't know, ultimately how the money is going to be used. They obviously have a need for a good amount of this cash, but most importantly, the person is going to need to have a source of income.
Right. And again, like I think, our thoughts and prayers go out to the family, but I like how you are able to systematically kind of step back a little bit and look at the situation and actually come up with a reasonable plan. Whatever ends up happening, we probably won't know, but I really just like the way you sit and you can approach and analyze the problem. So I wanted to give you a chance to kind of clarify that. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is, it is amazing how vulnerable we are at the early stages of our career, whether it's in medical school or residency. And I'll be honest, I don't remember. I mean, I wasn't married when I was in medical school, so I didn't have any dependents. But, I don't think I ever even thought about that type of, situation. So I think it is it is something that we kind of need to discuss as a profession about how to protect our students more during their most vulnerable times. I mean, obviously medical school tuition is crazy high as it is. You don't want to add on additional costs, but I don't know if medical schools have, insurance policies that they build into it, but my guess is if they do, it's probably nothing of any significance compared to a future physician's earnings.
Probably peanuts. Probably similar to our service members guaranteed life insurance that we have in the military, which is $400,000.
Right, and and that was the other thing, because when I got out of the Air Force was the first time that I was able to really get the disability insurance, because I didn't do it right out of medical school. But
yeah, you got to do it. If you're in the military and you're listening and you're still in residency or fellowship, you can still get a disability insurance policy through Standard, I believe, for a benefit of $5,500 a month, but it has to be before you enter into active duty out of training. If you're on an active duty residency, you can still get it.
Okay.
This whole thing with Ryan Folsom is tremendously, horrendously sad. He was from San Antonio. I believe he was a member of the Leon Valley LDS ward here in our town, which is right off of 410. And so the tremendous outpouring of support that he's received from the internet all over the world. It's got a little map. You can see there's people that are in Jakarta, Indonesia, and Montevideo, Uruguay that have sunk in. And as of a few seconds ago, when I refreshed the page, 3,268 people in 6 days have raised $290,550 for the family. So so good on them. I cannot for a second ever think that I'd be armchair quarterbacking or second guessing or anything of the decisions that this family made for themselves. It's in their state, I could understand, but it's not anything to talk about. But anybody out there who has people depending on them, please obtain life insurance. That's if we can take the lesson. This poor man who, of absolutely no fault of his own, had his life taken from him. His children lost their father. His wife lost her husband, and all these people coming together to help him out is tremendous, and it warms my heart to see. And hopefully, his student loans will be discharged on his untimely death, which is good. But it's just a horrendous thing. We don't like to think about our own deaths. We don't. It's horrendously morbid on the subject, and I guess it's Debbie Downer time. But I've actually dealt with very recently several people close to me who've had horrendous deaths. One of them, whether it's children or parents or what have you, it seems to be just a rash of ridiculous misfortune surrounding me in San Antonio lately. But anyway, besides the point, we don't like to think about things like that. We don't like to think about becoming disabled. We don't like to think about dying. We don't like to think about providing for our families. And how many fourth year medical students do you think have life insurance?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be very many.
Exactly.
Because we don't have enough of a educational force to get out there to let all these folks know who have families that depend on them, that recognize the importance of guarding against catastrophe and against the loss of income. Again, it comes back to epistemology. I don't think it's really very widely thought of. Like when you're first getting into med school, it's like, oh yeah, I need to get life insurance. Yeah, you're not thinking that. You're thinking of getting, at the top of your class, you'd get an orthopedic surgery residency like he was going to do. You're thinking of maxing your step 1 score, maxing your step 2 score, doing well on your away rotations. That's what you're thinking about. We don't have asset protection at the forefront of our minds. We don't have guaranteeing against, catastrophe, life insurance, disability insurance at the front of our minds. And maybe that's rightly so. But at some point along the way, we need to make sure that medical students early on are being educated about the fact that these things exist and needs to be thought of. And again, I'm not in any way picking apart these decisions at all. I'm not in any way saying, oh, you should have known. I'm not in any way intending to be callous about that at all. I'm simply only discussing a particular financial aspect on a financial podcast.
I mean, exactly. And I don't want to, I just think that, more than on an individual thing, I mean, most American medical students pay ungodly amounts of tuition. Life insurance is dirt cheap. Couldn't it just seems like the school would be able to include a basic policy on what is, an MBA, like in a high earning potential individual. Professional athletes, college athletes now are able to get insurance through the university. The university may actually take out insurance for them. So I feel like, almost at a system level, we might be able to do that as opposed to, putting it on, because like you said, no medical students thinking about this type of thing. And
bake it into tuition.
Right. I mean, it's going to be
how much would the $10
a month?
$10 a month.
Exactly. And that's what I think.
Bake it in,
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of money they pay for medical mail insurance and whatnot. I mean, life insurance would be nothing. Our medical school had a requirement. I went to a very big medical school, actually the largest single campus medical school in the country. And there were a number of students who died when I was in medical school. And so they actually had, I think the year before I started, somebody had died on an accident, a freak accident, and they required us to all have certain levels of medical insurance that they did not require before. Mm-hmm. People would get really, really cheap policies, and they'd get them, something bad would happen and they'd be alive, but then they basically would have to drop out of medical school because they didn't have any, financial ability to continue. But you would think that a large group policy for all students would be very, very reasonable to incorporate both disability and life, because it's just so valuable.
Yeah, group LTD is peanuts as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. I mean,
so it would be something. It would be something that I think, like you said, it would be really minimal cost. I mean, these tuitions are so inflated anyway, and no one's thinking about it. So but the institution should be able to have that kind of foresight, I think, for their students and future assets. So anyway,
maybe we should make this into something. I know we're just spitballing here, but I don't know, maybe. Jim Dolly's voice is heard, around the country. You got your podcast. Maybe this could be a thing. Maybe we need to start leaning on medical schools. Like, hey guys, this should really be something. You maybe might be a couple $100 a semester. The average student coming out of med school might have an additional $1,000-$2,000 of student debt for that. Right. But we've gone ahead and baked in insurance against catastrophe. Into medical school tuition.
It actually makes sense from their standpoint, because if somebody dies in the middle of medical school, they're going to lose potentially that enrollee for the remainder that you can't replace. So that they could actually be insuring against their own tuition loss.
Right.
Yeah,
I think it's something that we, let's continue that discussion. It's we're getting kind of long in the podcast here.
90 minutes.
But so I want to kind of wrap things up a little bit. David, you had mentioned getting your financial advisor certification. Tell me a little bit more about what you're doing.
Yeah, so many universities, we're talking, state flagship universities, UC System, University of Missouri, University of Florida, as well as a few private schools like Rice, Emory, Boston U, will offer a graduate certificate in personal financial planning. All right. And so these can be either in-person, online proctored, or online self-directed. The curriculum is mostly standardized from school to school. In fact, a lot of schools contract with certain online education delivery services. So whether you're going to, I think, Emory, Boston U, or Louisiana State, it's all the exact same thing, just as a different school on your diploma. Mm-hmm. Costs vary between about $3,500 and about $6,500. They say it takes the average in-person course is anywhere from 6 to 9 months. And the average online course is usually completed in about the same period of time. What this does is it's about 18 hours, so about a full-time semester and a half of about 300 and 400 level courses that a business major would take if you're majoring in finance school. And there's an exam attached with it to obtain the graduate certificate. Now, this is not the same as obtaining a certified financial planner or CFP designation. That's a separate thing. Now, this does fulfill the academic requirement for doing so for those that don't already have finance degrees or CPA designation or what have you. And in order to become CFP, one has to get a certificate similar to that and then take the CFP exam, which is just another exam. But on top of that, one has to perform 6,000 hours of directly doing this, which if you think about it, that's 3 years full-time employment.
Can you include your Facebook post?
It says that it can be done indirectly. And if you have somebody who's a CFP say that you met certain requirements, like you assessed a financial situation, you made some sort of number crunching, and you made some sort of recommendation, that sort of thing seems to be able to count.
There you go.
That's what it says on the CFP website. So I just have to find somebody, to sit down and certify that for me. Because you can ask my wife, I've wasted hours upon hours upon hours of, screwing around with Excel and, answering crap on White Coat Investor. But, that's fine. I mean, I'm going to submit it. If they count it, great. If they don't, also great, what have you. It's worth a shot. But what I'm planning on doing with it is basically sitting down with med students, residents, or career physicians. I like to do it maybe a couple of times a year. I think I would only bill time-based. I really don't want to get into managing assets and charging AUM fees. I know that's what money is. I'm a doctor. I'll get money, okay? But it's sort of the educational outreach, which I had discussed earlier. And, you might make the argument, okay, David, well, if that's your thing, then shouldn't you really be doing it for free? Well, don't get me wrong. There's a fair amount of stuff.
Your money is worth time. Your money is worth time.
There is going to be stuff that's going to be pro bono, and it's not just going to be for the sake of trying out business. But yeah, my time is worth money, and hey, my money is also worth time.
That's right.
I'll drive to you. I'll pick you up at your apartment near medical school and bring you to my home office, and we'll do it because that also lets me deduct my car as a business.
Nice. Victor, how about you?
Actually, I had one quick question for David. So when you're posting tax forms on there, are you just doing those manually on the PDFs, or do you have like some fast, easy way you're able to crunch those out?
Nah, I just type it on my 10 key tab and then go to screen grab, copy, paste, and Facebook.
Yeah, wow. Okay. Because you do that pretty fast. I'm impressed. All right. So I have been trying to get my blog off the ground for the past couple of months. I was all gung-ho to get it started. And then I'm in private practice, and I basically cover my own service, and I cover like 4 hospitals. And I've had a very busy fourth quarter of 2017 clinically, which is good, from that standpoint. But so my blog slowed down, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get it today in time for this podcast and get some more stuff up there, at least a good landing page. But then I remembered that tomorrow is like January 15th, and I have like tax stuff to do. So that was the whole day going through like 1099s and all sorts of stuff. But I do have a blog that is supposed to be coming up soon. It's called the 39.6.com. That's number 3 and the number 9, POINT, and then the number 6, which is based on the previous. I was thinking about changing numbers, but I was like, yeah, it's okay. I was like, I don't know if I don't want people to know my income is that high. So, yeah, it's 39.6.com. And I love teaching. I actually was a high school teacher before I went to medical school. Oh, wow. Part of the reason I'm doing this, people want to pick my brain all the time. And so I'm also starting to do some consulting work, not formal financial advising, but overall consulting on all sorts of things, financial and lifestyle design and whatnot, because, well, I've done all the groundwork and I'm in the same position. Like, I would go to a person like David very happily as a medical student, because, when you're asking for advice on financial things, it's much better when you're getting it from somebody who's in the same situation, because they actually know all the nuances of what's going on. You can walk into a place and find a 23-year-old financial advisor. They may know the things that they learn in class, but that is not the same as having managed hundreds of thousands of dollars of your own money. It's just not the same. There's nothing that can replace that. So, when you're in that financial situation and the differences between, entities and this entity is better than that, and what are the tax implications of that, and how to tax efficiently invest your money, those are the people that I happily pay my money to, because they know what they're doing. So, David, when you're up and running, let me know. I'm very happy to be one of your first clients hourly.
That'll be an honor, man.
All right, man.
Very nice. Well, I want to thank both of you guys for coming on. Very, very informative, and like your guys' Facebook posts, a lot of information to unpack, but some very, very good information, and I think the listeners will benefit tremendously. So, thanks again, Victor. Thank you, David. And then we'll when Victor, your blog comes out, let me know, and we'll link to it, and we'll definitely be looking forward to that. David, let us know the status of your certification and when you start, taking on your first clients.
Goal is August, September, but I'm gonna do best.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, both of you. Okay, thanks for listening to another episode of Dr. Money Matters. I hope you've enjoyed this double episode and enjoyed hearing the voice of two of the physicians that many of us have benefited from their expertise on the various Facebook financial groups, including my own Dr. Money Matters group. I know that I've benefited from their multiple well thought out and reasoned analysis and explanations, and I'm sure that's going to continue. Remember, though, we're not professional planners, although David is working towards that, and our discussion and recommendations may not be appropriate for everyone. So please do your own due diligence prior to acting on any of the topics discussed on this or any of the other episodes of my podcast. Please continue to let your friends, students, colleagues know about this podcast by sharing it on text or whatever social media platform you're on. And please continue to leave us positive reviews. It really does help a lot. I know it's not the easiest thing to leave a review, but it really does benefit. And if you happen to use iTunes or Apple Podcast via your phone, just find the show on the Apple Podcast app and scroll down to where it says tap to leave a review and put the number of stars that you feel appropriate. 5 stars are the best, so that would really help out. But please do that for my podcast as well as the other various physician podcasts that are out there. More episodes of this podcast are available not just on Apple Podcasts, but also on Google Play, Stitcher, and at drmoneymatters.com. And also audio versions are also found on YouTube and our Facebook page as well. And as I've previously mentioned, some of my other physician colleagues have podcasts, including the inspiration for this podcast, Docs Outside the Box, but also The Hippocratic Hustle, Happy Doc, Doctors Unbound, The White Coat Investor, and Eric Tate, a previous guest on this show, also has one called The Physician's Road. So I encourage you to check those out as well.